Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Auto insurance can all seem the same until it comes time to use it. So don't get stuck paying more for less coverage. Switch to USAA Auto Insurance and you could start saving money in no time. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
Hi everyone! Welcome back to another episode of Living Well with Janet, where we explore what it means to live well. I'm your host, Janet, a yogi, meditator, plant-forward eater, and all-around wellness enthusiast. I'm also a second-generation Asian American woman, an experimenter, and a deep thinker. Join me in my conversations and contemplations on the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, social, and environmental aspects of living well. I recently celebrated a birthday last month in September, and birthdays are an interesting time to reflect and evaluate. And honestly, this year has been one of the harder years of my life. I would say top 5, top 10 for sure, hardest years of my life. It was the perfect storm, a cataclysm of multiple things in my life being upheavaled, in transition, unsettled, or in flux. In fact, I think it's also been building over the last 4 years or so, and this year was the straw that broke the camel's back. The last few years have just been pretty complicated. If you listen to the main ABG podcast, you'll know that my love life has been chock full of heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak after I've lost count of how many of them in the last couple of years. I've also been running a small business and working for myself. And while it's been the utmost blessing to do this alongside good friends, it does not come without many challenges, especially if you are accustomed to working at a company with a steady paycheck and established pathways for growth and development. And also content creating for 4 to 7 years now without breaks, meaning I'm always in front of a mic or a camera and having to share and make sense of my life. So after all of this happening in tandem for the last 4 years, I think I kind of broke under all of that pressure this year. Moreover, this year I turned 39. It's the year before I enter a new decade, and I think when we are at this stage of life, pretty much entering midlife, there are a lot of life milestones that we are confronted with. In some ways, my life does not look how I thought it would at 39, and having to face that reality while still trying to be kind to myself and willing the confidence and fervor that's required to make change and keep going has been pretty exhausting. But I want to take this episode as an opportunity to share some of the things I've learned over the course of my 39 years, and especially this past year. If you are like me, in your late 30s and on the brink of entering your 40s, maybe some of this will resonate. Or if you're younger, in your early 30s or 20s, perhaps some of these learnings can be of benefit or inspiration for you. I by no means claim any sort of wisdom. Honestly, it's been one of those years where I actually feel less wise and less certain than I have at younger years in my life. But here we are, and here we go. The first thing that I have really concluded on this year is that the days are long, but the years are short. This is probably a fairly cliched quote, and you've probably heard it multiple times, but I think it is such a good one to describe the way I'm feeling now at the brink of midlife, and especially thinking about the last decade. You know, time in your 30s, it truly flies so fast. So many major life milestones tend to happen in this particular decade, if not in your life, in the lives of those around you. So life can truly look so different in just 1 or 2 years within this decade. People get married, they move away to suburban neighborhoods, establishing roots with homes, they start building families and having kids. Even if you are not the one personally experiencing these changes, them happening to the people around you means that your life will look different because your relationships with these people will have to change to accommodate these new life stages. And sometimes it can be very lonely when a large majority of the loved ones in your life go through these changes, and maybe you can't quite keep up in finding additional community and friends, not to replace them by any means, but to supplement, which can really make days feel very, very long. And yet, often this loneliness might exist for just a short period until you make a change. Whether that's starting to date someone seriously, moving to a new city, finding a new community. The point is that within this decade, so much happens that can cause a lot of volatility in our lives, which make the days, the hours, the minutes feel really long. And yet when we look back, it feels like just yesterday that you were entering this decade. The second thing that I've learned at the age of 39 is that it is okay to change your mind. If you listen to past episodes of the main ABG podcast, you'll know that I spent the greater part of the last few years focused so intensely on wanting to build a family. And I am now finding myself 39 and single as a Pringle. What I've learned from putting so much work into this sector of my life, only to end up with what feels like nothing, even though I know there's positive ways to look at this, but I'm talking about my feelings right now, and it's hard to not feel like I am at the end of this decade with nothing. What I've learned, though, is that if I cannot change my reality, I can change my mind. I'm not saying that I don't want kids or a family, or that I don't believe that I can still find a partner and build a family. But what I'm saying is that I am open to that looking differently than perhaps a more traditional template. I think after the last few years of pushing myself in all of these different ways to try different relationships and to aim for these milestones, I've learned that there are some things I'm not willing to compromise or do just to hit these milestones, just to get married and just to have kids. In my mid-30s until last year, I wanted to find a partner in order to build a family together. So I really prioritized traits I thought would make a good father. And now I realize my priority is finding a partner who I can build a life with for myself and with me, regardless of children or not. Traits I think would make a good father are no longer enough for me. So when it comes to this very large question about having children or wanting them, my answer has changed. I've changed my mind, and I think that's okay. Whether it's family planning or it is about marriage or it is about your career or it is about where you want to live, whatever it is, I want to just encourage you to think about the fact that in life, particularly in midlife, when a lot of these big life shifting and life determining decisions and milestones happen, that it is okay to change your mind. Hi there, enjoying the show? If you like what you're hearing and want more, you can become an ABG bestie and get our new audio episodes ad-free, special discounts and early access to merch, shoutouts at the end of our episodes, and we're bringing back our Dear ABG series as exclusive monthly Q&A sessions just for our ABG besties. Sign up through the link in our show notes.
Uh-oh. The last cookie.
You can get a new box of cookies in as fast as an hour with Walmart Express Delivery.
Are you my guilty self-conscience?
No, I'm the voice offering you promo code EXPRESS for free delivery on your first order.
Hey, who ate my cookies?
You mean, these cookies?
Order now. Welcome to your Walmart. Promotion valid for first express delivery order. $50 minimum subject to availability. Restrictions apply.
The next thing that I've learned at the age of 39, when in doubt, cry it out. And I'm going to add, run it out. I think there's a quote that says, the solution is salt water, ocean, tears, and sweat. And this is addressing, whenever you come up into a hardship in life or a challenging period, these are things that you can turn to. I spent so much time this year visiting the ocean and being around bodies of water. Manhattan Beach is one of my favorite beaches in LA, and I visited a lot this year. I love the Strand, which is this long like sidewalk that just kind of like allows you to walk or run or jog alongside the ocean. And it's, not too crowded there, but there's still some people. It's just such a beautiful place. And I've just been visiting that a lot this year. I also went to Bali and we visited the beach town of Sanur. And during one of our morning bike rides, which was one of my favorite activities that we did, I went onto the beach and I walked up to the water and I touched the Indian Ocean with my fingertips and I did a little swirly swirl. There is something about the beauty of the ocean that is incredibly healing and calming and soothing. But beyond it just being beautiful and healing, I think there's also something about large bodies of water that can be very humbling and force perspective. The sheer vastness of the ocean, seeing it, touching it, understanding how large and powerful it is, can help remind us how small and minor we are, and therefore also how small and minor our little human worries are. Nature can really be healing in that way, and I think particularly large bodies of water. When it comes to salt water, sweat is another one of those categories of salt water, or one of those types of salt water that can really be so healing. I got back into hot yoga this year and was going to classes like 1 to 3 times a week consistently for the last 9 months or so. And it was so healing. Something about that heat that intensifies the sweat. It is so good. I often, as I've shared on our podcast, I struggle with crying. I have a hard time releasing my sorrow, my sadness, my feelings. And sometimes it feels like the sweat is an alternative way for me to force the grief to exit my body in liquid form. Plus, when I push my body, whether it's in yoga or through running, physical activity, while I'm in a period of grief or sadness, I find that it sometimes actually helps me burst into tears, which can be really releasing and cathartic and amazing. Many times I've started crying in Savasana at the end of classes when we're laying there with our lavender towels on our heads, or maybe after I hit an intense sprint in a run. It's like this nice force that helps me release. But lastly, the category of salt water, when it comes to tears, I have also cried a lot more this year than usual. Sometimes it's happened, oftentimes at night alone, sometimes over sad girl music videos. Ariana Grande has been my go-to recently. Might be kind of sad, but I think it's incredibly necessary. And if you can, release it. So that is what I've learned. When in doubt, cry it out, sweat it out, run it out, go to the ocean. The next thing I've learned is the power of ritual. If you are going through a hard time, which inevitably you will encounter those if you go through life for almost 4 decades, I find that getting the basics down is almost always the best way to start getting yourself out of a rut. And if you're in a good place in life, which you definitely will experience after, 4 decades, chances are you have some sorts of rituals in place that are helping you maintain that good flow. Some regular practices or habits or activities that create structure and support and generally a sense of safety in your life. For me, I really like going back to my morning routine. I often do lemon water and I take my vitamins, and that's something that I've done a lot this year in trying to just maintain some sort of structure and routine and ritual. I also meditate in the mornings. That is something that I always try to go back to. I think just having anchoring habits and rituals and activities can be so grounding when you're going through hard times, but also if you're going through good times. I feel like oftentimes you can attribute them to these grounding habits. And sometimes it's not even about the physical benefits of what you're doing. It's more about developing a habit where you're taking care of yourself and you're spending time on yourself. It reinforces in your psyche that you are important, that you are worthwhile, which then leads to an increased sense of self-worth. And I think also the ability to stick to a ritual or a routine builds confidence. And often when we are going through a challenging period, self-worth and self-confidence are things that we've lost and are really working to rebuild. And so implementing rituals and habits like this can be incredibly helpful. The next thing that I have learned in my 39 years is that having money isn't everything, but not having it is. Yes, thank you, Kanye West, for this gem of knowledge. You know, I have spent a lot of my young adult years so focused on wanting to get to retirement or a state of financial freedom as fast as I could that this year I realized I'm actually sacrificing a lot of present day enjoyment, or at the very least, peace of mind and sometimes sanity. Like clutching my purse strings so tight, trying to save in ways that maybe are costing me in time and energy. Like having to price compare 5 different brands before committing to a product for something as minor as toothpaste. Is that $3 really going to make a big difference for me? I mean, I get it, and I think a lot of us having grown up in immigrant households, those are habits that have been ingrained in us. But I've really started to think about the opportunity cost in the time that it takes me to have this mentality or go through these actions. You could have maybe made $3 in some other way or gotten rest, which eventually then allows you to work more effectively at your job to make more and to get promoted faster, whatever that might be, right? I think this conversation in our generation around money, how to make more of it, how to save more of it, how to make what you have work for you, et cetera, it's been so prominent because we've gone through such challenging economic times, and especially with the pandemic and everything. But I've really started to kind of take a moment and realize that I've been immersed, or, media has been shooting me with all this content about making money, managing my finances, passive income, all these things. And it's maybe it's a little inflated, and I don't need to be worrying about money that incredibly much. I don't need to be trying to become a millionaire. And I think, like I had mentioned also, there is kind of an innate fear around money when you grow up in an immigrant household. And that affects how we think about money and how we manage money. And this is one of those years where I kind of had a little bit more of a wake-up call to realize I may be spending too much energy overthinking my financial situation. And if I can put a roof over my head, if I can have basic savings instilled, maybe that is enough. I'm not trying to enforce any type of being financially irresponsible. Make sure you're okay at a basic level, but maybe you can relax a little on trying to become super wealthy or retire as soon as possible. I thought about, why am I working so fast to want to retire early and become financially free early? What would I actually want to do when that happens? Why can't I just be doing that now while I am making a moderate and good living and feeling just comfortable with my finances? I don't need to be overachieving in that sense. So that's something that I've picked up about almost entering my 40s is, I think especially in your early adult years, your 20s and your 30s, so much focus is put on trying to build wealth. And while I think it's important, I think it's also important to check ourselves to make sure that we're not sacrificing so much and gonna wake up retired, but then lonely and burnt out kind of thing.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
The next thing that I've learned is, this is kind of maybe more of a perspective or a mindset. I've learned that if I am annoyed by someone or some situation, it is most likely a me problem more than it is a them or environment or external problem. I've come to this thinking because recently, in this past year, given some of the life experiences I've had recently, I've been in a pretty negative mindset. And it's a strange thing when you're aware that you're in a bad mindset. It's powerful to have awareness because then we can move to change it, right? But sometimes you're in a state of just not feeling ready for that change. You can't quite muster the energy or the fervor or the desire or confidence to improve your situation just yet. But at least for me, it's helpful to, first step is just becoming aware and knowing that I'm in a negative state. And one of the key ways that I've learned over the years to figure out and be able to tell that I'm in a bad negative headspace is that the world starts to feel really shitty and negative. People annoy me, things annoy me. Chances are it's not that the external world has changed, it's that your internal world has changed. And then when I realize it's not them, it's me, I can at least know that, the ideal thing is that you can move to like make your mindset more positive, right? Sometimes when you're not in the right headspace to be able to be making that change in the positive mindset, at least it can be a reality check that it's not the outside world, that you don't need to be telling off that person at the checkout counter or your coworker, or, it's not that the world and like traffic is something that you need to be getting angry at. That's not necessarily the situation. The thing that needs to be changed is maybe your internal world, and being patient with yourself if you're not ready to do that yet. That's okay. The next thing that I've learned at the age of 39 is that it is okay to care about your looks. For the first time in a long time, I have been very super conscious of my physical appearance as I age. Maybe it's because we've been working in social media for years now, or that we're on video for ABG all the time. But as I approach 40, I am really starting to see the real signs of aging. Like I see eye bags, I see crow's feet, even the style of my hair or my clothes or the pop culture references that I make, feeling like, oh my God, I feel old. I feel super not hip with it. I'm not aware of the social trends or how distant I'm starting to get from mainstream because, mainstream media, they usually target the young millennial Gen Z. But yeah, I used to really resist caring about these things, caring about what's popular, caring about looking pretty, and that's not really what this is about. But in some light way, I guess it kind of is. Like I used to just really resist caring. And I remember when I became conscientious of beauty standards as a young girl and body image, and getting like really angry at myself that I cared because I didn't want to care. I felt frustrated that these are not things that should matter. What matters is, being a good person, being competent, and having the things that you can control, your achievement, not necessarily the way you look and blah, 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 and that kind of a thing. But I did care, right? And I think from that past experience, I've learned that it's just better to accept that you care because it's human to. It's so human to care about your beauty or your age or your physical appearance or the fact that you're getting older, because I think allowing yourself to care removes at least one level of resistance where you're frustrated at yourself for feeling something that is so human. So that's something I'm working on and has evolved in, a very significant way as I inch closer and closer to my 40s. Is I've just, in the past year, once again been confronted with this period of really becoming so aware of how my body, my looks are changing and moving further away from mainstream definitions of what is good and being okay with that. So yes, I care about my looks because it's human to care. And as long as I do my best to maintain a healthy awareness and relationship with that, it's okay to care. The next thing I've learned at the age of 39 is to give myself permission to do nothing. I think closing out this decade, which usually our 30s are a decade where people are working so hard to build your careers, to build your families, it can be hard to feel okay with moments of pause. When we don't give ourselves moments of pause, it is too easy to burn out. So I want to remind anyone out there that it is okay and you should give yourself permission to do nothing. Bed rotting is so necessary for a life well lived. And this is something that I still fight and I give myself permission for, but I still, you need days, you need weekends where you just sit in bed and do nothing. Or if that is not your format, some other equivalent format of just doing nothing, of clearing your schedule, clearing your thoughts, clearing all of those things. It is so necessary for a life well lived. And that is something that I really have just learned to embrace, over the last couple of years, even though I still fight myself sometimes to feel like, I have to resist the urge to feel like I need to be doing something all the time. But it's so important to do nothing in order to regenerate yourself and to rejuvenate yourself. So necessary for a life well lived. The last thing that I have learned as I enter my 39th year, about to enter my 40s, is not to take life too seriously, because no one gets out alive. That's probably a quote you've heard somewhere as well, or a meme you've seen, or whatever it is. Yeah, life has so many things in it that can be so tempting for us to feel like it's do or die, but no one thing is going to be make or break. And if it is, then so be it. Then you should ride that wave to the end and accept it willingly. I don't know. Does that make any sense? I guess what I'm saying, and I guess this is really coming from a headspace of feeling like I have been taking a lot of life too seriously recently, is I've reached a point where it's like, you know what? No one gets out alive. And what's the point of worrying? What's the point of stressing? What's the point of putting all of your eggs into any one given basket? Like, no one gets out alive. So it's okay. It's okay. Let it be. Don't take it too seriously. Learn to see the joy. Learn to see the humor in things, because that will get you through life so much better. And that is actually really what a life well lived is, right? One filled with joy. And joy requires you to be able to see the humor in things. So that's today's episode. Thank you so much for joining me as I reflected on what I've learned in my 39 years, particularly influenced by this last year that has been challenging, filled with lots of unfortunate lows. And I don't want to belabor and make this a negative, thing, but hopefully the points that I've covered in this episode have shown some sorts of positive lessons or inspiration. I don't know inspiration if that's the right word, but yeah, these are just some of the things that I reflected on in my recent times. I would love to hear from you, no matter what age you are, just what it is that you feel like you've learned in your life in this past year. Once again, this is your host, Janet. I can also be found on Asian Boss Girl, the podcast for the modern-day Asian American woman, with my good friends Helen and Mel, who are also hosting their own shows, which you can catch on this same feed, new episodes every Tuesday. You can follow ABG on Instagram at Asian Boss Girl, and me, Janet, at Janet W. That's Janet, the word double, and the letter U.